Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. My goal is to be unbiased and transparent. It's a privilege to serve you. This is not an endorsement. Let's get into it. We are back in Long Beach, California. It is just a beautiful morning. We're trekking out the Trek Dual Sport Plus 2019 and beyond. I've reviewed the Dual Sport Plus and the Nico Plus before. That's kind of the his and hers. And the Nico is like a mid-step frame design, and they're doing away with that. Now they're just going to Dual Sport Plus, which you see here, and Dual Sport Plus Women's with that mid-step frame. And they come in a couple colors. We're looking at black here. Trek Black is what they call it, glossy. And then there's this gunmetal silver for the women's. Frankly, I'm glad that they chose something like silver that's very timeless, that can be unisex, also highly visible at night, because I think that the mid-step frame is actually very appealing to someone who has like a knee or hip sensitivity. The standover height on this isn't terrible, but you bring it down a little bit, it's just going to be easier to mount, especially if you decide to add a rear rack. Or maybe you're just not someone who wants to swing your leg up and around. You tip the bike towards you and step right over. It's nice to have two different frame styles. It's also really nice to have 5 frame sizes, and that's what Trek is offering. A lot of their bikes come, I'd say most of their bikes come in multiple frame sizes, and that's a big win for people who are extra small and they do have an XS frame size, or people who are really tall, they have an extra large. So 5 frame sizes, very nice. Trek has a huge network of dealers all over North America, and that means you're going to be able to go in and test ride one of these, and you can choose for yourself. Maybe you're just fine. You have no problem getting over the high step and you prefer the black or something like that. Great. You can test ride it. You can dial it in. I believe I'm riding the medium frame size here, but this is pre-production, so it doesn't have the Class 1 sticker. It also doesn't have a size on it, but I did measure it, and I include those specs back at the website so you can sort of see for yourself. I did weigh this bike. It's about 45.7 pounds, which is slightly heavier, a few pounds heavier than the old Dual Sport Plus, and that one used the Shimano E6000 drive system. Now they've moved completely to Bosch. So we have the Bosch Active Line Plus with the Bosch PowerTube 500 battery. Really nice upgrade. Very clean and integrated, whereas before they had this big plastic box that was mounted on top of the top tube. Now it's completely internal. And when you look at this bike from the side, it really does look like a bicycle. The motor's very compact. That's 7.1 pounds for the motor right there, compared to 8.8 pounds for the Performance Line motors from Bosch. This thing is very quiet and smooth, and it uses a traditionally sized chainring, 38 tooth right here. Steel chainring, so it's a little bit tougher, and it's got an alloy guard that's going to protect your pants, and also I think the chainring, if you get a strike below, maybe even protect that motor casing. So it's very compact. It's smaller, it's lighter, it's quieter, and it's going to be more efficient. It's going to maximize that battery that we'll talk about in a minute. The drivetrain on this is fantastic. This is Shimano Dior. It's got the one-way clutch, that little gray lever here. So in the down position, it's a little bit looser. I'm in the lowest gear here, but you can see that it moves a little bit easier than if I'm in the locked clutch on position. It's tighter, and that's designed to reduce chain bounce. That's great if you're going off-road, and this is the Dual Sport. So just like the motorcycles that are called Dual Sport, you can ride it on the road. These knobs are kind of small, and they're fairly tight, so it's going to be fairly efficient, but if you do go off-road, you're going to get a little bit of traction. So the tires slightly wider, 700 by 38C, combined with this suspension fork, SR Suntour NRX. To me, this is a slight upgrade. I see a lot of NCXs. This has 63 millimeters of travel, 30 millimeter stanchions. This one has compression with almost lockout here. I've tried it, and it does lock out pretty solid, and preload adjust. So if you're someone who weighs a little bit more, you can preload those springs and create some efficiency, reduce the bob and dive when you stop. Love that it matches the bike frame, just really looks clean and beautiful. I noticed that both wheels, they have this 5mm Allen key and no quick release. Okay, so that's interesting. That's another question mark. Like in a city environment, it's nice not to have quick release because people aren't gonna be able to just take your saddle, take the seat post right out, take your wheels. On a mountain bike, most of them have quick release because you want to be able to do trail maintenance without having to carry extra tools. So to me, this bike it's really straddling that like urban versus very light trail. I wouldn't want to go on this with really bumpy trails. It's more like kind of cross parks and packed trails, things like that. Actual mountain biking, I'd want like 100 millimeters of travel. I'd want slightly larger tires. More air volume is going to equal more comfort, bigger knobs, that kind of thing. And this is a hardtail, meaning there's no rear suspension and there's no suspension seat post. This is 27.2 millimeters by 330 millimeters tall. You could find a suspension seat post, but you might notice that it has this really cool integrated light with 11 LEDs. Gosh, so many times I see little lights mounted here or on a rack. They only have 1 or 2 LEDs, so 11? I mean, that is fantastic. It's really nice, and this saddle's fairly comfortable. This is the Commuter Comp from Bontrager. That's Trek's brand. So you'll see some other accessories that are labeled as Bontrager as well. The thing is, this light, it's wired in through that seat post. So there's wires kind of coiled up down there. So when you take it off, be careful. If you pull too hard and too far, it might break that cable or stretch it or something like that. And then coming back to the suspension seat post, unless you can route that through, you know, and kind of unplug it down here, it adds some complexity. Okay, so the other thing, nice, it just powered off. If you leave the bike for like 5 minutes or so, it automatically powers down. But I want to mention, let's pretend you're wearing a long shirt or a jacket. It's very easy for the back to hang down and block that rear light. So this is sort of a mixed bag for me. I mean, I love that it has so many LEDs. I love how like sealed it is. It's wired in. It means it runs off that main battery pack. That's great. Just like the headlight, they both run off the main battery. The thing is, it could be blocked. And let's say that you do add that rear rack, because it does have the bosses right down here. So there's multiple threaded eyelets. You could have a little rack, but if you put a trunk bag, that might block that as well. And I have it fairly high up because I'm a fairly tall rider. I guess I have a longer inseam. So I'm glad that they included it, but I sort of wonder if something down here or, you know, it's really just, it's sort of tough. Just keep that in mind if you do get that rear rack. I'm wearing, this is like a Bontrager circuit helmet that I just asked them. I was going to the Jack's Long Beach a bicycle store, and that's where I picked up this bike, because Trek, you know, they'll send stuff out occasionally to do a review and share with you guys, which is really awesome. But I was asking them, I saw these like demo helmets, and I think this is like medium size, might be a little small for me, but it has these lights like, you know, attached. Really cool stuff. And you could get one of these lights for a rear rack. You know, Trek has a whole series of accessories, and this bike is totally set up to add a fender in the rear, even a frame lock right here that would lock and secure the rear wheel so people couldn't walk off with the bike. The front, you could put a fender on that too. You can add additional lights up front. There's this headlight that we were talking about before, and it has these side windows that are so cool, these little orange cutouts. So visibility is a big deal for them. They have this like A, B, C's. It's like biomotion, contrast, so you want to wear like light colored shoes to keep that kind of moving. You'll notice that these tires are not reflective, but they do have some reflective stickers right there on the rims, so that's great. So it's going to be kind of twinkling, I guess, as you ride past, and that's wonderful for a black electric bicycle like this. Even the pedals, look at these additional reflectors built right on that. That's wonderful. It's the little details that I feel like Trek gets right, and I'm just trying to give you some feedback on how to optimize. And you may think like, hey, I got that backlight, and then your coat is blocking it. So just be conscious of that when you're riding. So as we continue on, one thing that I love about this bike, in addition to how nice it looks, how safe it is just that the weight is low and center on that frame. And you can really see that, right? That creates excellent balance when you're lifting it up. Let's say you're hanging it on a bike rack. Maybe you're just steering and you're doing some of that off-road riding that we talked about. It's going to handle a little bit better. I really appreciate that. And then hydraulic disc brakes. So these are Shimano 3-finger levers with adjustable reach, so you can bring them in a little bit if you have smaller hands, or maybe you've got gloves on because it's cold outside. And down here we've got 160 millimeter disc brake rotors with dual piston calipers. I'd call that average. You know, again, that's more of like it's a good choice for city riding. We got the 14 gauge spokes, black. They match the black rims, the black hub, and then a little kickstand right here. It's okay, the kickstand. It's not really adjustable in terms of length, so the bike sort of tips to the side, but that's fine. You know, it gets the job done. There's maybe a little bit of bouncing, so if you do a lot of trail riding, you could easily remove this or replace the kickstand. 20 millimeter mounting interface right there. Very, very standard. And then up here, you know, we talked about the pedals and stuff a little bit. You'll notice that the left side of the bike It's got the keyhole for the battery. We got 2 sets of bottle cage bosses, and we've got the charging port, and you'll notice that they're centrally aligned. So if you're charging the bike right here and these pedals move, they're not gonna hit the charging port. A lot of other electric bikes have the charging port right here. So I like that Trek put it on top, and then they've got this little like leash thing, so you're not gonna lose that rubber piece. It's not gonna get misplaced. Some of the other companies like Bulls have a little magnetic piece or a plastic piece that comes off completely. It's very easy to misplace, and then you can get dust and water in there, and it's fairly well sealed. I mean, this is Bosch equipment. They do a great job. But I just think that Trek did an excellent job. It fits in nicely. I don't have to screw around with it, trying to align it and stuff. And again, it's not gonna be snagged. So while we're on the topic of charging, here is the charger. This is Bosch 4 amp, a little bit faster than average, like 1.7 pounds, fairly compact, but we do have a 482.4 watt hour battery. Call it the PowerTube 500. It's roughly 500 watt hours. You know, with a high capacity battery, nice to have a charger like this, just a really high quality, fairly lightweight, fairly compact for what it does. And then we're on the right side of the bike. Now, what you might notice here is that we've got the outline of the battery, okay? And I love that Trek has it mounts from the side, not from below, because I've looked at some other bikes where the battery sort of flops out, right? You know, you've already got something that's kind of heavy and maybe unwieldy because you're unlocking it and you're using 2 hands to position it, and then the battery comes out from below. I like the side. It feels a little bit safer. It's just easier to manage and interact with. And with mountain bikes, a lot of times you will not have a kickstand. You can lean the bike over like this on the non-drive side, which is going to protect your derailleur and cassette and everything like that. So that's what you do a lot of times. And now look, the battery's accessible from the side. So Trek really put some thought into that. I think they did a great job, and I'm gonna try to show you now, get the keys out and just unlock it and show you what that looks like. And while we're doing that, I wanna call out these nice Bontrager locking grips and stuff. We were up here at the cockpit a minute ago. Trigger shifters, it's a 2-way shifter, so the high gear can go forward or back, and then we've got 3 steps on the low gear. I mean, it's just nice. Shimano Dior, definitely higher end equipment, possibly even overkill, but more trail capable, and that's what they're going for with the dual sport, and that's part of the price. So let's see, we insert the key, and while we're talking about that, check it out. It's an ABIS locking core, and it comes with this like key code card, so you can order maybe a folding lock or that frame lock we talked about, and it uses the same key, so you're not fooling around trying to figure out which key goes to what, and extra weight and junk in your pockets. So here we go. We inserted the key, we turn it, there we go, and that's step 1. The battery kind of clunks out, and it doesn't come all the way out, it pauses, and that's a really smart design because this is kind of heavy. This is 7.3 pounds. That's the thing. You know, Bosch, they used to only have the power pack, and it was like this plastic battery that would mount on top of the down tube, or maybe here, you know, some of them it was in a rack. And it was a little bit lighter. It was like 5.7 pounds for that, but it was always, well, mostly external. Trek did have this battery design where it was sunk into the frame, but then it made the frame wider and stuff. So when Bosch moved to the power tube, it added a little bit of weight. They put it in an aluminum alloy casing. It weighed about 6.3 pounds, so up from 5.7. You're like, okay, but now you've got to put this shield on, and Trek has these plastic end pieces. It ends up weighing about 7.3 pounds, okay? So again, 6.3 to 7.3, it's about a pound extra for the same battery capacity, just so you can have that nicer integrated design, okay? And it does add protection. If you crash the bike, the battery might not break off as easily. It's not going to be exposed to the elements. It's going to make the bike stealthy. So it's a win in so many ways, but there is a little bit more weight. And I think sort of offsetting that weight is, remember, it's aluminum right here. This is like part of the frame. So let's pretend that section of the frame is subtracted from the weight of the battery. Maybe it's a little bit closer, but there's still the challenge of, okay, carrying this thing is a little bit heavier. So see that little arrow? If we push down, it releases the rest of the way. So that's the second step. And when we do that, they've got this nice little handle thing going on. Trek calls this their rib battery design. So this is proprietary to them, the plastic piece, the little handle and everything. And you'll see that metal plate right there. That's to give it extra security when it's locked in, so people can't just force it and try to, you know, take the battery. You know, again, 7.3 pounds. So when you're carrying it around, really nice to have that handle for safety. And then looking inside the frame, we have access to these cables and stuff, so it might be a little easier to service. And then there's the little, see the silver metal piece right there for locking the battery in and stuff. It's fairly secure. It's a nice design, and I feel like the frame is still going to be fairly sturdy, because this is technically, can be like a mountain bike. So here's the power tube battery. We've got a charging port at the bottom. You can charge it off the bike. We've got a little LED power readout so you can see how full it is. Some other specs here. It's this 36 volt, 13.4 amp hours. Says pretty nice. But the thing is, let's imagine that you got like a his and hers, okay? Like a silver and a black one. The shell's gonna be a different color, which is kind of interesting. So I think the batteries are cross-compatible. Even if you had like a Trek mountain bike, you might have a gray one or, you know, a red one or something. And then the battery, if you tried to use your extra power tube, it would probably work if it was Trek, but it wouldn't necessarily match super well. And let's pretend you're trying to carry this in a backpack with you to like double your range. Again, heavier than the power pack was. Maybe not as universally available. Power packs all looked kind of the same, and they were interchangeable across bikes. So this is more of a comment of trade-offs here. There are some older Trek bikes and stuff. The older Dual Sport Plus, it had the Shimano system, so it's completely different than this, but it's just something to consider here. And we are talking about spending a lot of money, but Bosch does support their stuff pretty extensively. I think they provide parts for like up to 10 years, and this comes with a 2-year comprehensive warranty. You have all those dealers. I personally, you know, you look at this and it's like, this is the future. This is where the bikes are going, but you are paying a little bit more, and some of the compatibility question marks come to mind for me. And when we get ready to put this back on the bike, just like set it in down there, right? Sort of start pushing it. I'm gonna put this handle in the down position, and you can't just force it on. You actually have to physically go over here, turn the key again, and then it's able to kind of click in. So to me, that's sort of a bummer. I like to take my keys out and put them in my pocket right away so I don't misplace them, but you kind of have to leave them in or reinsert them to get the battery back on. So that's another one of my like just minor complaints here. I've been really thorough at this because this is one of the big three. It's a bike a lot of people are going to have access to, and I want to give you as much information as possible so you can make a good decision. I personally think that the drive system is great. I like the style. I like the size choices. I was noticing that it appears that this is a straight head tube, even though it looks tapered. They sort of bulge it at the bottom to match and create some visual balance with that larger down tube. You know, the 700C wheels, it's a larger diameter, so it's going to lower your attack angle, a little bit more air volume because it's wider, it's bigger. And these are kind of medium width. They're not nearly as narrow as like a road tire, but they're about as narrow as I'd want to go, balancing with comfort. Because again, with the suspension seat post and stuff, you tend to ride further, tend to go faster on average when you're using an electric bike. And so these tires are, you know, it's a big deal. You want it to be comfortable, or at least I do. That's something that's become important. And then these do have some puncture protection built in, so it's like a hard case design, and that's nice because again, no quick release, and changing flats is never a fun thing. However, with the drive system and everything at the center of the bike, you're not dealing with a hub motor. You're not dealing with extra cables or anything. It's all just sort of regular bicycle components with the drive system right at the middle. So with that said, I'm going to pack these things up and show you how the display works. Okay, so the battery's all charged up and locked on. I do want to remind you, lithium-ion batteries of any sort are a little bit temperature sensitive, so extreme cold, extreme heat can be hard on them, and they might not last as long. It could decrease the overall lifespan. Also, if you know you aren't going to be riding the bike for a while, I recommend storing the battery at around half full so you're not stressing the cells. As soon as you get below or above 20 and then 80%, it's maybe a little bit harder on the batteries. This is something I've learned from like hybrid vehicles that have a battery balancer that automatically kind of bounces between those 2 points to extend the life. So that's the other tip. And being able to remove that battery and store it separately from the bike is really nice because you might not have room inside for this whole bike, but you probably have room somewhere for that battery pack. Okay, so we're here at the display. Moved it so you'd be able to see it a little bit easier with the sunlight. Just gonna press the power button on top of the display right there. Comes to life very quickly. We've got speed. Right now it's in miles per hour, but we could hold minus and tap power and it would switch to kilometers per hour. So that's kind of cool. Down here in the middle, we've got assist level, and it always turns on with off. So it's basically just like a bike. It's a heavy bike, but you can pedal efficiently. There's no drag created by this motor. There's no reduction gear like on the performance line from Bosch. Press plus or minus, we can raise or lower assist level. We go to Eco, Tour, Sport, Turbo. That gives you 270% assist feedback, up to 50 Newton meters of torque. So very capable. I found that you do have to switch gears a little bit more frequently with a mid-drive in order to get that higher speed or to climb efficiently. If you're climbing, you want to be in a low gear. Trying to hit the higher speeds, you want to be in the high gear. Down here we have that same 5-tick infographic, very much like we saw on the base of the battery pack there. So 20% steps, which isn't, you know, as precise as I'd like. Maybe 10 ticks would be better, or even a battery percentage would be nice. However, there's a little secret in here. If we hold the minus button, we go from assist to trip distance. And by the way, to clear that, we hold plus and minus simultaneously and it resets it. We hold minus again, it goes to total distance right here, that's odometer. And then I was getting excited. Range, there we go. We're at range. So right now it says in the highest level of assist, we estimate based on your last mile of riding that you can go 36 miles. That's fantastic. If we go all the way to Eco, 64 miles. So pretty significant. You're not gonna get a whole lot of support on Eco, but it's gonna take the edge off. It's gonna feel more like a traditional bike that's maybe more light than this, not quite as heavy. So that's very cool. And then there's one more secret down here, this walk mode. If you press that and then hold plus, the bike walks itself. And that can be nice. Like let's say you got a flat tire, or you're in a park like this and you don't feel comfortable riding, or maybe you're on a trail and there's just a section that's a little bit steep and you'd prefer not to try to ride. The bike will walk itself, and I appreciate that. You might notice that the pedals were sort of cycling as well. You can pedal backwards on this, and it even cycles the chain and the cassette and everything, but it's just, it's a little bit sticky. Like it doesn't, see how it's not like spinning, it just sort of stops. I think it's because it's cycling the gearing system inside the motor. So that's just a question mark. Some of the older Bosch Performance Line motors, they would spin and it didn't move the chain at all. It's a minor consideration, but this one's a little bit easier to do drivetrain maintenance. So overall, this display is decent, but it's not perfect. You can swivel it a little bit to reduce glare if you don't over tighten it. You can't really remove it. It's got this micro USB charging port right there, but that's just for diagnostics and software. It's not actually for charging your phone or your Strava or your extra light or anything. It's just kind of a waste in my opinion. I've been complaining about this for quite a while, wishing that it had an active micro USB, because Bosch has a larger display called the Intuvia that is removable. It does have an active USB port. I think the buttons on that one are also a little more consistent. These ones pivot down like this towards the screen. So if you press right here, it's very consistent, but if you press right here, it just doesn't work quite as well. You can get it, but it takes more energy and stuff. So, you know, the display's fairly reachable. The display LCD itself is kind of small. It's grayscale, it's always backlit and sort of this like faint white glow. And we've got those three menus, trip distance, total distance, and range. But the Intuvia also has like average speed, max speed, trip time, clock, shift recommendation. There's more to it. So this is a stripped down version that a lot of e-bike companies use for mountain bikes because they want it to be small. And in this case, it makes sense because you want to have this light right here on the front. And if you had a display, it might not fit. So, you know, it gets the job done. Overall, the bike, I think it offers a lot of value and a lot of quality. Just coming back to those brakes and the drivetrain, the drive unit itself, it's good stuff. You are paying a little bit more because you've got those frame sizes, because you've got shops, because you've got that great warranty. And, you know, the parts on this bike, whether it's the tires or the integrated lights, they're gonna last longer than a lot of the other bikes that you see online with maybe a hub motor or something like that, that they can get the job done, but this is a little bit more efficient when you're trying to go the distance. The battery integration is just beautiful. That's really what I'm kind of thinking about here. If you want a bike that's gonna last, this is that type of bike. And the big three, you know, Trek, Specialized, Giant, they all have electric bikes now, but my experience with Trek has been that they have excellent customer support. I'm a reviewer, right? So I'm interacting with these companies. Usually they're trying to be extra nice to me, but not always. Sometimes they're sort of scattered and inconsistent. Trek has been very good consistently, and I think they're one of the more innovative companies when you look at like that battery integration and stuff. So that's, you know, this is my opinion. I'm excited about what they're doing, and I think they're kind of raising the bar in the space. I'm gonna do a little riding now, so I'll go up to turbo. I like to do that because we're in grass right here. I'm just gonna take it away. It's feeling pretty good. You know, I'm not having to stand up or really overwork here because I've got the motor support. And I'm wondering, you know, these taller wheels, I was gonna do the no hands test. Yeah, oh boy. Feeling pretty stable still, which is nice and fairly comfortable. This saddle is good. A little bit of creaking up here, and I just wonder if that's, you know, when they built the bike or something at the shop. This does have a sealed bottom bracket, and I believe the headset is sealed as well, which is nice. You're not gonna get like as much rust, or I would say creaking, but again, I'm hearing a little bit here on this ride test. Here you can see that 38 tooth steel chainring with that alloy guard, right? So when I'm pedaling, I do have pants on. It's gonna protect my pants from getting too greasy or snagged. Same thing if you had like a skirt or something with the mid-step frame. And it does look tight enough there that it's gonna kind of guide it too. I don't see that chain dropping off very easily. And then back here, that's the 11 to 42 tooth spread. Really nice, 10 speeds. I'm gonna be pedaling along in the highest level of assist so that it's fairly pronounced. You can get an idea for how quickly the motor starts and stops, and I'm gonna switch through and you can try to get a sense for that shift detection. You know, it's software driven, it's not perfect. I'm still gonna ease off a little bit for the smoothest shifting, but it's nice to have a motor that's thinking about that. And again, measuring the rear wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque over 1,000 times per second. It's a pretty advanced motor controller. So just there, I think I was hitting the top RPM, that's 105 RPM rotations per minute, and then the motor sort of and then it fades out. But there's no reduction gearing here, so there's no drag. You can definitely pedal beyond 20 miles per hour. It is going to be gear dependent here. I'm in a lower gear right now, so was purposely trying to max out the RPM. Now I'm going to go to a higher gear and see how fast we can get going. We hit 22 miles per hour, and that was with me standing up, pedaling pretty hard, but it worked. And here we've got a top-down angle on the suspension fork, and you can lock it all the way out like that. It's not going to move at all, or you can just partial lock out here. This is what I call the compression adjustment. I'm going to leave it open because I'm fairly lightweight. Also on the other side there's preload, so you can preload the spring and sort of tighten it, and that's going to be good for someone who's heavier, so you're not getting bobbing or severe dive when you brake. Ride. Well guys, I think that's about it. I've had a lot of fun out here going over the bike with you. I feel like Trek's doing a good job. You're paying a little bit more, but you're getting a pretty good product here. I really appreciate your feedback and comments and stuff, so feel free to chime in below if you're watching this on YouTube, or head back to ElectricBikeReview.com where I've recorded all the stats. Like, I'm pretty thorough. I go through and weigh stuff and measure it, and I have like a comparison tool so you could compare this to last year's model, or get some idea of the different drive systems and things like that. Leave a comment here, there. Also the forums, that's another place. Maybe you've got some ideas for accessories, something you really like. I learned from you guys. I always appreciate that feedback. I love ya. Have fun out there, ride safe. We'll see you next time. Hey guys, so we're back at Jack's. These guys opened up in 1971. There's 10 stores, pretty impressive, and the owner's floating around here somewhere, but as you'd expect, pretty busy. I just wanted to kind of thank them for letting us film here, and also point out some of the other bikes. I've reviewed several of these, and it's interesting to see the prior generation. You can see the power pack where they sunk it into the down tube. I still think that looks really nice. A little bit lighter weight, just not quite as clean, and then that's the sort of the original power pack that's just bolted onto the top tube. Got a bunch of bikes here, and they're doing some clearance event stuff on the older versions, and here's the new ones, the super commuters. One thing I wanted to point out here, Trek owns Electra, right? And these are the Townies, and they have the Ace of Spades. Check this bike out. This is a limited run right here. Really cool. Got the big fenders and stuff. Same thing, the external power pack battery. I've never seen one of these in person, but they talked about it when I visited Electra down towards San Diego at one point. So it's pretty neat. Great to see a shop like this that has such a wide selection of different bikes. And that's what we were talking about out there, where you can try different sizes. You can demo last year, this year, do some of the pricing comparison. So I really appreciate that. Are you Dave?
I'm Dave.
Hey, you're the owner and founder?
Unless you're a bill collector.
No, well.
Oh, you're not a bill collector?
Not today, today.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for supporting the review. It just got the Dual Sport Plus and checked out the 2019 with the integrated battery. And I was, thanking you guys because we've worked together before and done some other reviews, I think down south at maybe like the Irvine store. Or...
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, Bosch is huge. And then you take Bosch, that's just an absolute wonderful company in the world. You take Trek Bicycles, which is an absolute wonderful company in the world.
Yep.
You put them in a shake and bake bag, and out comes these wonderful electric bikes, not only from manufacturing or design, manufacturing to shipping to assembly to sales to after to usage.
Yep.
The whole thread is just, it's wonderful.
And so Dave, you've been doing this since 1971?
Well, I have been doing this since 1976.
Okay.
Jack started Jack's in 71.
Okay.
So yeah, I was 15 and a half when I was first involved with a Schwinn store in 76.
It's awesome to speak with like an owner and a little bit of
Oh, you're welcome.
time. So thank you, Dave.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for coming to our store.
We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.